there was a giant kangaroo man covered in polka dots who kept appearing in a public television studio, and somehow one full-grown adult in the room could never see him. Every time. A host would walk in, miss the creature by 3 seconds, and then stand there saying, "I missed him again."
The Polkaroo here? And I missed him again? Oh!
Like Canadian preschool television had just invented softcore gaslighting. And the weirdest part is this was not some chaotic cable access fever dream filmed behind a grocery store. This was educational television. Government funded, carefully designed, built by people who wanted your tiny developing brain to learn shapes, songs, animals, friendship, imagination, and apparently how to question reality before you could tie your shoes. Because the Polka Dot Door was not just a gentle little preschool show, it was a ritual, a spell, a soft, quiet room where toys were alive, doors opened into other worlds, and Polkaroo became one of the strangest mascots ever launched from the innocent canon of children's TV. And once you understand where this show came from, the whole thing gets even weirder. The Polka Dot Door began in Ontario in the early 1970s, back when public television still had the confidence of a substitute teacher with a turtleneck and a government grant. It came from TVOntario and the Ontario Educational Communications Authority, which had launched in 1970 with a mission to use media for education. Not produce junk content for the stickiest members of society. Education. Imagine that. A children's show created by people who looked at television and said, what if this glowing box made children better? Instead of, what if we sold them 12 plastic variants of the same raccoon with sunglasses? The show debuted in 1971 and ran until 1993, which is an insane run. That is 22 years of children being gently escorted through a door covered in dots like they were joining a preschool secret society. The clearest founding figure behind it was Dr. Vera Good, an educator who helped lay the conceptual design and served as the first executive producer. And that matters, because the Polka Dot Door does not feel like it was invented by network executives throwing darts at a board labeled clowns, puppets, and mild jazz. It feels like it was built by someone who understood children. Not children as consumers. Children as people. Tiny, sticky, emotionally unstable people, yes, but people. The founding team included names like Peggy Liptrot, Ted Coneybear, Pat Patterson, Dodie Robb, Dictor Hodge, Marnie Patrick Roberts, and Ada Sherman. That may sound like the credits of a forgotten educational Avengers movie, but these were the people shaping what Canadian kids would feel when they heard a chime, saw a rocking chair, or watched an adult speak for a toy that absolutely did not move. And Dictor Hodge is especially interesting because he designed both the TVO logo and the Polka Dot Door logo. That means the look of this show was not some random preschool wallpaper accident. It was tied directly to the visual identity of TVO itself. This show was not a side quest. It was part of the institution's face. And here's the part that sneaks up on you. For something that feels deeply local, the Polka Dot Door traveled. TVO signed a distribution deal with NBC after only 1 year of operation, and the show eventually reached places far beyond Ontario. That explains why some people remember it like a transmission from another dimension. Because for a lot of kids, that's exactly what it was. You didn't discover the Polka Dot Door like a normal show. You encountered it. Like finding a weird channel during a sick day, wrapped in a blanket, eating soup from a mug, and wondering why the toys in Canada seemed emotionally more stable than most adults in your life. But the origin only explains how the door got built. The real magic was what happened after it opened. The genius of the Polka Dot Door was that it looked simple. That is the trick. The show was organized around 5 weekday themes. Monday was Treasure Day, Tuesday was Dress Up Day, Wednesday was Animal Day, Thursday was Imagination Day, Friday was Finding Out Day. That is not chaos. That is architecture. Preschool architecture. The show taught kids the rhythm before it taught them the lesson. You knew what kind of day it was, you knew the room, you knew the hosts, you knew the toys, you knew the pattern. And then, inside that pattern, something new could happen. That is why it worked. Kids do not just like repetition because they are tiny weirdos who want you to read Goodnight Moon 16,000 times until your soul files a complaint. They like repetition because repetition makes the world feel safe. The Polka Dot Door understood that. Treasure Day brought out the toy companions. Dress Up Day opened the closet and turned imagination into costumes. Storytime came with chimes, a clock, and a rocking chair. Finding Out Day used the actual Polka Dot Door as a portal to little educational films about the real world. Factories, animals, crafts, places, processes. It was like the show gently took your hand and said, "The world is very big, but don't worry, we're going to look through a polka-dotted window first." Then there were the toys. Humpty, Dumpty, Marigold, Bear. Later, Minou, who introduced simple French because Canadian educational television was not playing around. But the toys are where things get fascinating. They did not really move like full puppets. They did not run around causing sitcom trouble. The host treated them as alive, through attention, through voice, through belief. And here is the recontextualization. The Polka Dot Door was not a puppet show. It was a seance for toys. I am sorry, but it was. The adults sat in a bright room and interpreted the wishes of motionless objects while soft piano music floated underneath like Mr. Rogers had been remixed by a haunted nursery. And somehow, it was beautiful. Because children already live this way. A toy does not need to move for a child to believe it has feelings. A stuffed bear can be tired. A doll can be scared. A plastic dinosaur can have beef with the couch cushion. Do not lie. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The show did not ask kids to pretend toys were alive. It met them where they already were. And then came Polkaroo. Polkaroo is the reason this show became folklore. He appeared most famously on Imagination Day, covered in polka dots, speaking mostly by saying his own name.
How'd you do?
Polkaroo!
How are you?
Polkaroo!
What do you say?
Polkaroo!
Polkaroo!
Which is either adorable or the first symptom of mascot-related madness. One host would see him, the other host would miss him. Then the missing host would return and be devastated.
Polkaroo was here, and I missed him again.
He just left.
And I missed him again?
Polkaroo was here and I missed him again?
Oh, I missed him again.
And every child watching had to sit there with forbidden knowledge. You saw him. The host did not. You were suddenly more informed than the adult in the room. That is powerful television. That is also how you accidentally create a national conspiracy joke. Because as adults, many viewers realized the likely production trick. The host who was missing Polkaroo was often understood to be the one inside the suit. The show did not sit you down and explain that. It just let the bit happen. Week after week, one adult disappears. A polka-dotted kangaroo arrives. The adult returns. No one files a report. Canada, are you okay? But that's why it stuck. Polkaroo was not just a mascot. He was a magic trick with emotional consequences. For children, he was wonder. For adults, he became a meme before memes had a place to live. And the hosts were a huge part of why this worked. The show used rotating male-female host pairs with more than 50 hosts over the run. That means everybody has their own version of the show in their head. Maybe your Polka Dot Door is Cindy Cook, who became one of the most remembered long-running hosts. Maybe it is Dennis Simpson. Maybe it is Noreen Virgin, who later became associated with today's special. Maybe your memory is just a blur of kind adults, sweaters, soft voices, and the emotional certainty that the door knew something you didn't. Modern kids shows can be louder, faster, shinier, and edited like a tablet is holding a hostage negotiation with your child's attention span. But the Polka Dot Door was patient. It trusted quiet. It trusted rhythm. It trusted that a child would care about a toy bear if the grown-ups treated the toy bear like he mattered. And that is why the show worked. Not because it was flashy, because it made imagination feel official. Like TVO stamped a government seal on pretend. But even the safest children's shows have an afterlife. And the Polka Dot Door's afterlife got very, very strange. Now, the Polka Dot Door does not have the kind of scandal where you find out the costume room was being run by a disgraced magician named Gary. This is not that episode. The tea here is not dark in the obvious way. It is weirder. The real drama is that a calm educational preschool show accidentally created one of the most powerful nostalgia cryptids in Canadian culture, and then decades later, that mascot somehow ended up in a legal fight with a weed parody. Yes, that happened. In 2018, TVO reportedly threatened legal action over a cannabis-themed parody mascot called Tokaroo, created by Mark Scott, a longtime Polkaroo performer at promotional appearances. Tokaroo was basically adult nostalgia, taking the childhood mascot, putting it in a legal weed context, and saying, what if Polkaroo went to Trinity Bellwoods Park and made some choices? TVO did not love this. Shocking. The broadcaster argued the parody could tarnish Polkaroo's reputation, which is one of those sentences that sounds completely normal, until you remember we are discussing the reputation of a polka-dotted kangaroo person who speaks like a malfunctioning Pokemon. But I get it. Polkaroo belonged to childhood, and childhood mascots are weirdly sacred. You can parody a celebrity. You can roast a politician. You can make fun of Grimace and nobody calls a congressional hearing, although maybe they should. But touch the wrong children's mascot, and suddenly an entire generation rises from the comment section like sleeper agents? Because these characters are not just characters. They are memory containers. That is why the Tokaroo story is so funny and so oddly revealing. It shows what happens when the kids who grew up with the mascot become adults with adult jokes, adult politics, adult events, and adult internet brains. The brand wants innocence preserved. The audience wants to play with the memory. And Polkaroo is trapped in the middle, still saying his own name, probably calling his lawyer. Then there is the archive problem. A lot of old children's television is functionally missing. Not always destroyed, but inaccessible, trapped on old tapes, scattered in collections, or buried in formats nobody casually watches anymore. And that matters because the Polka Dot Door was huge. It ran for decades. It shaped childhoods. It became part of Canadian TV memory. But many people cannot easily revisit it the way they can revisit other shows. So the memory gets stronger and stranger. You remember the theme song. You remember the door. You remember the toys. You remember Polkaroo. But maybe not the episode, not the exact scene, not the full context. That is how nostalgia becomes folklore. Not because everything is preserved, because some of it is missing. The gaps invite imagination back in. And the Polka Dot Door was always about imagination. That is the accidental poetry of it. The show that taught children how to look through a door now lives partly behind one. There were also real human aftertones in the lives of the people connected to the show. Ted Conybeare and Dodie Robb, both major figures in Canadian children's television, died in 2012. Dennis Simpson died suddenly in 2010 after a brain hemorrhage while preparing for another children's production. Those facts are not tea in the tabloid sense. They are reminders. The people who made these soft little worlds were not magical beings who lived in the studio forever. They were artists, educators, performers, workers. They had careers before and after the show. They aged, they moved on. Some left before the nostalgia wave could fully hand them their flowers. And yet, the work stayed. In 2010, the Polka Dot Door was honored by the Academy's Masterworks program as culturally significant television. Then, years later, a licensed stage musical was announced, proving that the door still had not fully closed. That is the real twist. The show was designed for preschoolers, but it outlived the preschoolers. It followed them into adulthood. It waited until they were old enough to understand that the strangest part was never Polkaroo. The strangest part was how much they still cared. The Polka Dot Door understood something about childhood that adults forget. Children do not separate the real world and the imagined world as cleanly as we do. A toy can be just a toy, and also someone who needs to be tucked in. A costume can be fabric, and also a doorway. A song can be a song, and also a place you return to when you hear the first few notes 30 years later. That is not confusion. That is openness. When you were little, the world had more doors in it. A closet could become a kingdom. A cardboard box could become a spaceship. A stuffed animal could hold your secrets better than any person in the house. And shows like the Polka Dot Door did not laugh at that. They honored it. They treated imagination like something worthy of structure, care, and time. Maybe that is why these old shows hit so differently now. We are not just remembering the program. We are remembering the version of ourselves who could believe that a polka-dotted creature had just barely left the room. We are remembering what it felt like when adults slowed down long enough to enter our world instead of dragging us into theirs. And maybe we come back to these shows not because we want to be children again, but because some part of us misses living in a world where wonder was not embarrassing yet, where soft things mattered, where songs opened doors, where an ordinary room could become magical if somebody kind sat beside you and believed with you for a little while. The door was never really the set piece. The door was childhood, and for a few minutes, if we are lucky, memory lets us peep through it again. If the polka dot door lived rent-free in your childhood brain, hit like, subscribe, and join the Nostalgia Club so we can keep rescuing these weird, beautiful little shows from the dusty VHS basement of history. And if you want to support the channel with a one-time gift, you are not just supporting a video. You are helping keep the memory alive for every show that made us feel safe, confused, entertained, and mildly concerned about a man-sized polka dot kangaroo. Drop a comment and tell me, were you a Polkaroo kid, or did this show feel like something you hallucinated during a sick day? Because I know some of you have been waiting your whole adult life for someone else to say, no, you did not imagine it. You just missed him again.